Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where today you'll learn exactly what to say in your stories to grow your influence and your impact.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
I'm not sure if our do-it-yourself brand story creation workbook is right for you, but the system has helped hundreds of companies and thousands of people clarify their stories to amplify their impact. How open-minded are you about trying a different approach to growing your sales with a crystal clear brand story? What do you know about business storytelling and how an intentional approach to your own personal, professional, or organizational brand story can make all of the difference in your success? How would you feel if, in just 2 sentences, you could light up your audience and have them understand exactly why you're different from your competition and how you can help them? Just imagine what it would feel like to be heard and understood for a change. That's what the DIY Brand Story Strategy Workbook will do for you. It will help you clarify your story to grow your revenue and amplify your impact. When would be a good time to download your Business of Story Workbook? Right now? After this show? Tomorrow? No matter when you use it to create a compelling brand story, I'll be curious to hear what you like about this proven system. Now, if you're a regular listener of the Business of Story podcast, because you want to use story as an unfair advantage in your business but haven't yet downloaded your DIY workbook, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to it because you're either skeptical, don't want to invest $45 in yourself and your brand, or you don't think you have the time to do it. Well, if any of these are true, then what questions do you have for me? Just ask by sending me an email at park@businessofstory.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about clarifying your story to grow your revenue and amplify your impact. As I see it, you have 3 options. You can muddle through on your own and hope to get to that brand story you need to grow with. Or number 2, do nothing. Just hang there, just do nothing. Or option number 3, you can download your DIY Story Strategy Workbook right now and start creating a more prosperous story for you and yours. Which of those options is going to be better for you? I've learned that there are 2 types of people in this world. Those who are fine with the status quo and those who have the courage to strike out for something different, something better in their life. Which one are you? I bet you're a bit like me when it comes to wanting to clearly communicate how you can help your customers. But it's hard. We're so close to our own brand offering that we can't see the forest for the trees. We need someone on the outside looking in to help us overcome our blind spots, take advantage of opportunities hiding in plain sight, and help us to be successful. If you decide to give this a try, then I promise the Business of Story DIY Story Strategy Workbook will help you clarify your story to grow revenue and amplify your impact. Or I'll give you your money back. And don't worry if you're not ready right now. I'm not going anywhere. Keep listening to the show and keep growing as a business storyteller. You'll know when you're tired of getting what you've always gotten and you're ready to clarify, amplify, and simplify your business and your life. What most people who invest in the workbook do is fill it out with their story, send it to me to review, and then jump on a Pick My Brain session where I can help them fine-tune their brand story. The good news is it works every single time. Plus, I also pick some of these folks to work their stories live on this show, and that's turned out great for everyone. They define their story, and you get to hear how to do it yourself. So who knows, maybe you could be right here with me on Business of Story, refining your story. So what happens next? Well, you download your DIY workbook, set a completion date on page 5 that will hold you accountable to finishing it, and then work it and watch your brand story come to life. I've included examples and tutorial videos to make it even easier. Now, you might be thinking, this isn't for me, and that's okay. But I gotta ask, what makes you say that? What is the reason this isn't for you? You can even let me know at park@businessstory.com. I'll be curious why you think this isn't going to work for you. And before you make up your mind that this is not for you, perhaps you would like to download the free What's Your Story interactive PDF. It'll give you a sampling of the DIY workbook while helping you immediately clarify your story. You'll find the free download in the tools section on businessofstory.com. If I can demonstrate to you the power of a purpose-told story with this free download, will you consider investing in your brand story with the DIY workbook? And what if I told you that you can use the workbook over and over and over again on every single story you need to develop to enhance your personal influence, elevate your career, and or grow your organizational brand? Would that be enough? One investment, 100 uses? Oh, and just one more thing. If you're still questioning the power of this brand story creation system, just listen to shows number 98 and number 102, where we work Jonathan Barney's and Temitayo Oshinubi's brand stories. You'll hear their stories come to life before your very ears. And now a favor from you. Would you happen to know just one person who is interested in clarifying their brand story? A person just like you who takes the time for personal and professional development, who would benefit from becoming an intentional and powerful business storyteller? Then please do me the favor and share this episode with them. In fact, you'll be doing them a favor as well. Just out of curiosity, what would keep you from investing in your brand story and sharing this show with others? I'm always interested, and you can let me know again at park@businessofstory.com. Now, on with today's show. You just experienced what Phil Jones calls the magic words. I use them throughout this opening. He outlines how you can use them in his new book, Exactly What to Say, The Magic Words for Influence and Impact. Phil has made it his life's work to demystify the sales process and bring both simplicity and integrity to a world that is often full of big egos and even bigger lies. He has delivered over 2,000 presentations in 56 countries across 5 continents, training more than 2 million people. So it's like you've got Phil here all to yourself on today's show. And I thought he was perfect for the business's story because of his unique philosophy of using specific word choices in his stories to teach his audiences exactly what to say. We often discuss story structure on our shows, but today it's about the words. Use the words from his book and his advice from today to influence, persuade, and drive outcomes. Let's get started with Phil Jones. Hey, Phil, welcome to our show.
Hi, Park. Thanks for having me.
And you are coming to us from where, Montreal?
Montreal right now, but typically out of New York City.
Out of New York City. Well, it's great having you here. I've really been enjoying reading your book, and it's a quick read. Exactly What to Say, The Magic Words for Influence and Impact. And when I was going through this and then jumped on and learned a little bit more about you, you were doing some really powerful things in sales training, coaching, and motivation. Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, I've been in this space for a huge period of time. So thanks for the comment towards the book. The book's something I'm remarkably proud of. But my story as a whole, I guess, takes me right back to childhood. When it comes down to my business journey, I started my first official business as such at 14 years of age that had me just knocking on the doors of my neighbors.
What were you doing?
I was just asking them kind of politely whether they wanted to have their cars washed. And okay. Some said yes, a few said no, but most just asked me how much I would charge. And I found myself into business from a very early age, to the point that by the age of 15, I wasn't going to school anywhere near as often as I should. And I remember being invited in by my school teachers questioning my attendance. And one of the funniest things there was the ability to respond with a question to my school teachers when they were asking why I wasn't coming to all of my classes. And my response,
the Socratic method, huh?
Right. Well, I just figured, I'd ask them a key question. The question I asked them was, how much money are they making? And most of them refused to tell me. But at the time, my little car cleaning business was delivering me the equivalent of around $4,000 a month. So I was in a good spot as a teenager and have been involved in entrepreneurial ventures really since that point of time, as well as some really enjoyable and learned experiences through the corporate world. So I think in the time we have for the podcast today, if I went through my backstory and history, we'd probably need a 3-hour show just to get started.
Okay, but now wait a minute. How does a 14-year-old make $4,000 a month in a car washing business?
Okay, well, there's a few things here. Like, one giant lesson is people like to be serviced, right? So there are lots and lots and lots and lots of jobs that we all know that we would like to get done in and around our homes, yet we can't get ourselves out of our own way to be able to get those things done. I knew this as a kid. So it wasn't difficult for me to acquire customers. I was doing a job that people know that needed to be done, but they didn't want to do it themselves. So the demand was huge. I said it a second ago that knocking on the door resulted in fairly decent conversion rates. What I had to do, though, from there is to turn it into something that was profitable. I got too busy too quick and learned something really cool. I learned some things about pricing. I used to charge £3 a car. And at £3 a car, we got too busy, but I didn't make any money and I couldn't scale it because I couldn't pay any of the kids in the year below and still make money for myself. So I pushed the price to £3.50, and at £3.50, everybody would pay £4. I'd get this little bonus tip, and I thought this was fun. So I pushed the price to £4.50 a car, and in the UK, there's a magic piece of currency called a £5 note or a fiver. So naturally, consumers would leave by putting a fiver in our hand, and this was good fun. So we jump one more stage and say, well, let's push the price to $5.50, and at that point, people would say, not this week, Phil. And I learned about the ceiling of price. But once I got to that price point, we could put ourselves in a position that I could put people on day rates working alongside me, washing cars, paying them £20 a day. And we could scale up the business to know that there was enough margin involved. And that's what I was doing as a kid. And it was tremendous fun and taught me so much, even through blind ignorance. Sometimes the best lessons are served by you not knowing what you should be doing.
Well, and your pricing policy then was just a science experiment until you got to that tipping point where they started pushing back.
And I still use that same example of teaching audiences today about how they know their price is the right price. You know, something needs to make sense on paper, in that you've got a cost of goods and a margin that you need to be able to maintain. But very rare do people take their pricing and look at it from the top down and say, what can I get away with charging here? Where is the resistance points within your existing marketplace? And that lesson shares it with people really quite profoundly.
Well, and Phil, I'm on your website at philmjones.com, and you, a young man, you've had a lot of success. How did you build your story or your sales repertoire or motivation repertoire to now be, sought after around the world to come in and work with sales teams and organizations?
Yeah, my corporate career from starting in businesses took me through to being senior management in one of the leading department store groups in my my late teens, and working through project turnarounds with one of the largest furniture retailers. I was involved in the world of commercial directorship, shirt sponsorship deals, retails within the world of professional soccer. I built a large property business with a business partner of mine that turned over £240 million at its peak. I got this breadth of career between the ages of 18 and kind of 27, 28 that was really far more than many people achieve in a lifetime in terms of the experiences it gave me. The stories I could share that came through that experience are so abundant. But it left me in a position at 2008 where we were about to sell our company for a significant sum of money. But you'll probably remember what happened in 2008 is the world got a little sticky for a second.
Yeah.
And what we had was a great product on a Monday that by the Friday we couldn't give away through no fault of our own. The currency markets moved, the lending criteria and everything had moved, people's confidence within the investment marketplace had disappeared overnight. We found ourselves with nowhere else to go. But what else started to happen is I did a lot of my business through local business networking groups. And in those business networking groups, I would see dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people who were remarkably good at what they do, failing to get the results I knew they were capable of because of one simple fact. And that fact was they didn't know how to make stuff happen for themselves. They didn't know how to sell. And this was something that kept me up at night, seeing good people struggling to be able to make ends meet through something that was a set of skills that came so naturally to me. So the business I have today was formed through accident. It was formed through my business that was where my kind of heart and soul and energy was at the time, had to naturally come to an end. I was looking for something to be able to do and started to put on small sales training workshops to serve the needs of the people who were in my existing community, done for fun. And what happened is those then became chargeable, those then would build out from there. If I look at my business today, we're remarkably different, but still the same principles in play. That very first workshop that I delivered was created on a series of very simple questions. First question was, how's business? Everybody I met would tell me it was good, which I knew meant that not everybody tells you the truth. So I learned a second question. The second question was the question, really? I asked the question, really, and people would say, well, things could be better. I'd ask the next question that said, well, what are you doing to make it better? I'd get a typical answer of no or nothing or not a lot. I'd follow it up with another question and say, are you serious about making a change? To which everybody would say yes. I'd follow it up with another question, which would be, what are you doing on April the 23rd?
And what happened on April? What was happening then?
Well, that would have been the date of my next workshop. But I wouldn't have ever sold the workshop. I'd have sold towards the problem. And in my very first year in business, when we're talking about 2008 here in this business, is I did somewhere like 35 open workshop programs in that first year, utilizing that exact same process. And there's a beautiful thing that starts to happen when you put yourself into the position of education in a skill set in and around like sales. So I had all of my personal experience. I had the people I'd trained through corporate environments. I had the people I'd coached and spoken to within the organizations I've been part of. But running that number of workshops and then picking up the coaching and consulting off the back of that meant that even by the end of year one, I'd had transparency and observation of somewhere like 1,000 different business units. And the most surprising thing about the challenges of those 1,000 different business units wasn't the differences, it was the similarities. Everybody had the same challenges. Everybody had the same obstacle. People were only struggling to do 3 things, and those were 3 things that I was pretty good at. The 3 things that people were struggling with was either finding more customers, getting them to come back more often, or getting them to spend more money when they shop. So I tried to start demystifying those processes and starting to unravel or reverse engineer how things that came naturally to me or things that I'd experienced in other environments could be repurposed and realigned towards other people's problems. And that's where my methodology started to come from. Training materials, my first book came from, which was a book called Toolbox that I wrote in 2011. And I started professionally speaking initially with the purpose of being able to sell spaces on my workshops. So that's where that part of the journey came from, was I wanted to put bums on seats in workshops. I knew that if I could speak towards groups full of target market, that was my most successful marketing metric, to be able to put the right kind of people in the room. And then that flip-flop later down the tracks.
So, Phil, your background in this experience between 18 and 27 or 28, was it much more learning by doing in these different roles versus going to school, getting a degree and coming out? Are you just like basically street smart in this area?
That's exactly where I am. And I think one of the finest things that has been taught to me through the people that I've met is the ability to be curious and to learn from understanding and understand from people that have been doing, and then take their learning and put it into practice so that I get first-hand knowledge and experience by utilizing their expertise. So I've been a practitioner my whole life. I've been brave, I've been curious, and I've been studious since really as far back as I can remember. But I have no degrees. I've not been professionally trained in order to be able to do what I do, but I have more experience than almost everybody who has, because of the fact it's just mesmerizingly awesome to be able to learn from people who are at the top of their game, and to be humble enough to study that and ask questions towards it and not be in awe of it, but understand it, has allowed me to build a Frankenstein monster of my own career, which is taking some of the best bits of the lessons I've learned from others.
Yeah. Now, Phil, I was really excited to have you on the show because I'm hoping you can answer a question for me on a trend that I'm seeing, and I might be seeing it inaccurately. But let me just take you back a little bit in my career. I've been in the advertising marketing world for 30 years. And the first 7 or 8 of those years, I graduated with a degree in it, and I went to work for some small agencies. And man, I just wasn't going anywhere. My career wasn't going anywhere. My income wasn't going anywhere. My creative wasn't going anywhere. And then I got a call from a network marketing company called, at the time, Quorum International.
Okay.
And they were looking for a creative director. And I knew nothing about direct sales or network marketing, and I'd only heard the MLM, multi-level marketing pyramid scheme things and whatever.
Yep.
Well, I went out there for the interview, was lucky enough to work with a lady by the name of Lynn Harper, who was just this amazing marketing mind, and I was hired in as their in-house creative director.
Right.
And it was a blast because I loved the people, I loved the energy. I was still working in the corporate domain. I had to help with the product launch. I think we had like 5 new products we had to launch within the 6 weeks of me being hired. We had to name them, design the package, logos, put the positioning on it, and roll it out to 16,000 distributors. I know you know this world very well because you work in it.
Yep.
I was blown away by the business model. and the power of it and the energy of network marketing. And the one concern I had, and I still have to this day, is despite people's best efforts in that industry, really only, 10% really achieve that level that everybody's going after. Now, fast forward, I started my own agency after that, and one of my first clients was Forever Living Products. Actually, they were my very first client, and I know you worked with them as well, the world's largest grower, distributor, producer of aloe vera health and beauty products, and a fabulous company owned by the Mon family, and represented them, worked with them over the past, 20 years of my agency. So I come back and I still see these wonderful folks come on stage, these motivational speakers. They get the audience all fired up and off they go. And I know then that really only 10 to 15% of them are going to achieve their dreams by doing it. Now, fast forward today, and I see the same things happening in the online world.
Right.
Social media, marketing, online courses. Everybody all of a sudden is popping up and they're gurus and let me show you how to do this and let me show you how to do that. And believe me, I've been following a bunch of them and I've paid for some of these courses because I'm trying to figure out how to do a better job of marketing my own work on Business's Story online. But what keeps smacking me upside the head, Phil, is the same that I'm experiencing now, the same thing I have seen those distributors experience. And that is like 10% of the people actually really do it well, and the rest of us just keep banging our heads against the wall. Do you see that, and how do you help people get over that?
Well, number one is I see it. You've just given two worlds that same thing exists in network marketing and in the online marketing space. Can you give me a environment where that thing is not true?
That's a great question. The way I would differentiate that, I guess, is in network marketing and so much in the online space, it's a solopreneur endeavor.
Right.
Someone's taking it on and they are spending their time and effort in getting it. When I compare it then to traditional marketing, I'm thinking obviously much more of larger brands. They have a workforce, a sales team. They have many of these resources in place to help them build it. So that's, I guess, is where my differentiation is.
Right. And when you start to study that differentiation, the key difference between the two environments that you've mentioned and everything else out there that we've learned to be true is there is an expectation within the world of the online marketing space or within network marketing is that if you do these three simple things, this time next year you're a bisquillionaire.
Right.
Right? That's the belief system that gets kicked in. So what happens is it creates a false level of expectation. And the risk in which is failure becomes the norm because the bar was set too high. The bar was set in a position that if you don't get to this level within this period of time, then you messed up. Now, this is because people start to run too quickly. And I know run before you walk or whatever is a cliche type analogy. Yet it's more true in this environment than ever. So what happens, say, for example, is somebody decides to get involved in the online marketing space. They buy into a package that says you can make money while you sleep, and all that you need to do is to do these 7 things, or these 15-step formula, or these 21 points of agenda, and you too can be printing money while you sleep. The same thing is then true in the way that people will present a network marketing, direct sales, multi-level marketing business, is that all you need to do is to find 5 people who will find 5 people who will find 5 people, and then what happens is you get paid without ever needing to do any work. That's the myth. What network marketing is, what internet marketing is, are all abilities to be able to provide leverage. They give you a platform to take something that's brilliant and make it run a little bit faster. They give you access to scale quickly. They still require 2 other key ingredients. 1 is a giant heart of core competence. 2 is an engine to drive that system to help go over the lumps and bumps that are in between. So what the risk is in the 2 industries that you've mentioned is they are attractive to people who love shortcuts. Yet the success within this environment is by bringing the work and understanding the power of the levers. So the reason that only 10% go on to be able to achieve it is because only 10% follow through on the commitment that it would take in order to be able to achieve it and actually study the quality of the craft. They're not looking for shortcuts. They understand that there's a long-term vision here. And I think that the sales expectation and the reality is where that misses. When something is sold as being able to deliver one thing, and there are mistruths in that, then that's where we find ourselves in a real issue. And to give the example is in the 2 environments that you said, they quite often get sold as an opportunity to earn a 6-figure or 7-figure income quickly. And then people promote the lifestyle. Even what works within the marketing metrics is an exaggeration of lifestyle. There's pictures of infinity pools and fast cars and wads of cash.
Right.
And people get attracted towards those things, and if they don't have those things quickly, they feel disappointment. The truth is something remarkably different. And for anything that is integrity-based in sales, we have to be able to get excited about the truth, and the truth has to be sexy to us. In network marketing, multi-level marketing, direct sales, my first thing to say is if you cannot get excited about earning $200 a month extra, you don't deserve to get excited about 2,000. You don't deserve to get excited about 20,000. Jim Rohn once said that profits are better than wages. And I think the minute that you can tap into the power of a leverage system, and that you can see how with the basics being done to a high standard consistently, you can lock down on making $200 a month and you're not exchanging time for money for it, that's where you can start to say, how do I make this train set run faster? But you've got to build the train set first. You've got to look after the train set before you duplicate a train set, and then before you push it with venom. That's what nobody tells people.
Mm-hmm. So, Phil, in all the work that you do and the folks that you see out there in all industries, and you were saying that those that you were, getting to come to your workshop, what was the one or two things that you saw consistently that people weren't doing that was hurting their ability to sell and grow?
The first one is so ridiculous, it's insanely profound.
Okay.
Finish this sentence for me. If you don't ask,
they're not going to buy.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't ask, you don't get. You don't ask, you're not going to receive. You don't ask, they don't buy. I was meeting company upon company, person upon person that would tell me everything that they would want, and I would ask them, what are they doing towards that thing? And the answer would be nothing. Mm-hmm. Like nothing. Like, oh, I really want to grow my referral business. That sounds fantastic. You want to drive more referrals. What have you got in place right now, strategically and action focused, to drive referrals? Nothing. Like, I want to grow my average transaction value. I need customers to be able to come back to me more often. Okay, well, what are you doing towards that thing right now? So what I would go on to be able to do was A, call them out on the real reason why they're failing to get the result that they're shooting for, is that they're not shooting. And then what I would do is I would empower them with some tactics that they would then believe would work. So I would sell them on a plan. I'd sell them on some steps. I'd sell them on some skills. And here's back to your point about seeing the motivational speakers that would perform in an environment like the environments that you were used to for network marketing. What happens is they got people fired up. And in that moment, with the energy in the room, everybody was fired up, passionate, committed, dedicated to go out and make a change. Then what happens is they took that energy, they looked down at their prospect list, they looked at the people they needed to call, they looked at the person they're going to bump into the next day, and they found themselves going, now what? Fearful of saying, well, I'm lost for words. One of the big reasons why I wrote exactly what to say is because that was one of the biggest stumbling blocks of people. Like, passionate about wanting to be able to pick up the phone to people, to be able to create opportunity, or like committed and dedicated to go and bump into more strangers and network with other people to create more opportunity. Yet when they got to the moment, regardless of motivation, they found themselves lacking skills. And skills are the thing that enable belief. Skills are the things that enable confidence, and skills are the things that drive results. So my work is as a practitioner to teach people the how so that they can find a way of being able to plug into their why.
So let's go to your book. I think this is a wonderful transition here about exactly what to say. And I was reading through it. And by the way, on your site, I love the description of someone said there, read this book once a day for a week, and then once a week for 2 months, and then you'll finally have this stuff embedded. And I think it's true, because when you first go through it, it seems simple, but it sounds like it's profoundly successful when you get into it.
It's huge. And smart people do a big job to make things seem more simple to other people so that they can take them on board. Mm-hmm. What starts to happen, though, is that, and I read many of these books too, that I have to dig through them like crazy to find the 7 things that have been useful to me. But it took me 65,000 words and 3 days of my life to be able to get there.
Right.
We live in a world where we want things fast and we want to be able to impact upon them quickly. This is a book that my goal was to be able to deliver upon that promise. It was about being able to give people deep-rooted knowledge and understanding towards the principles that stand behind it, and to deliver on the title of telling people exactly what to say, and to give them application and examples to be able to use it for one primary reason. They went and did it. Because the knowledge only comes from doing. People say that knowledge is power. It's one of the most useless phrases that I think could ever exist, because you know of dozens of things that you could or should be doing right now that would get you closer towards the things that you say that you want, you don't do them.
Right.
Knowledge isn't the thing that leads to the power. It's the choosing to use what you know that leads you to become more powerful. So this book is about being able to empower that. Precise sets of word choices for dozens of simple scenarios that give people confidence in conversation, that leads to confidence in conversion, that means they get more of what they want. And I've had so much fun sharing this information with people through the years. I wanted to distill it down into a potent pill that would be applicable to dozens of scenarios, whether it is somebody that is looking to secure the next sale, whether it is somebody looking to get a promotion in their employed role, or whether it's as simple as getting a child to eat more of the dinner that they're not eating. I wanted it to have application.
And Phil, so this is arming people with what to do next when they walk into that, run into that prospect. You get them all excited, they get fired up, they watch a webinar, they do whatever, and now it's like, okay, what do I do next? And so you've got 23 different comments, sayings in here, and the very first one starts with, I'm not sure if it's for you, but. I'm not sure if it's for you, but. So totally playing off of FOMO, the fear of missing out, I guess. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's more than that, really. Is firstly, you got to understand that one of the biggest predicaments that people have is they fail to introduce things to people because of the fact that they are fearful of one key thing. And the thing that most people tell me they're fearful of is fearful of rejection. My goal in the creation of this set of magic words is to talk to people's subconscious in a way that would allow them to invite them to take a look at something in a completely rejection-free way. Now, we've talked about, say, network marketing. Let's use it as an example towards maybe where some of the listeners exist on this show. Well, the goal of network marketers in its initial recruitment point of view is to find other people who might be interested in doing a similar service, to grow a team of people who are asking other people to be able to go out and do the same. But the thing that is for sale is rarely the supplements or the products, etc. It's the opportunity to be able to go on and earn. So we can create conditional scenarios by saying, I'm not sure if it's for you, but you wouldn't happen to know somebody who had a spare 5 hours a week interested in earning an extra couple of $100 a month, would you? Mm-hmm. Like, what is the worst that anybody can say back to that? Well, the worst they could say back is, I'll have a think for you. But what starts to happen is, if I position something to the left or the right of somebody, and by saying the words, I'm not sure if it's for you, your little subconscious kicks in and says, well, I'll be the judge of that. It also says something different. It says, what is it? Those are the two questions that are raised in your own mind when something is positioned with that way. So it piques a really powerful emotion, and that emotion is one of curiosity, which means that they now have to listen. And that is one of the biggest things that gets missed in a lot of communication, is that the other person fails to listen. So it doesn't matter what was said, they weren't listening in the first place. Here's the magic though, is the insertion of that 3-letter word but. We've created a rejection-free opening. Let's look at where the word but appears in other areas of life. If somebody gave you a huge piece of feedback towards your role as a podcast host and said, look, I love what you're about, I love the questions that you ask, your personality, your tonality, but what's the only thing you remember? You remember everything that follows the but. It negates everything that prevails there.
Yeah.
So what happens when you introduce an idea to somebody using the words, I'm not sure if it's for you, but you've created a rejection-free opening that's then been diminished, which means the subconscious voice really hears, you might want to look at this.
Yeah, and the storytelling geek in me, Phil, says, the but is where the conflict is in every story. It either is creating contradiction or conflict. So Randy Olson, a good friend of mine that has written a whole book on the and, but, and therefore structure, this plays right into that. It is how our mind is created to make meaning. So your setup in this question is, I'm not sure this is for you. That's like Act 1. That's the quick setup. But
you got it.
There's the conflict in the contradiction that gets inserted, and all of a sudden your reptilian brain snaps to attention. But what?
And the magic in this book is the reader is allowed to discover that truth that you've just worked out without me needing to tell them that. Because it's try this is what works, here's an example of how it works, put it into practice, and what you've just discovered and articulated back to me, I don't write that in the book on purpose.
Right.
Because you have to experience figuring that piece out for yourself for you to be able to feel the level of confidence that would be attached to its application.
And let me ask you, Phil, and I love that because you're inviting your reader to be a part of the story. You're helping them ferret it out so that it's going to connect. I want to jump ahead to a couple of these, and how in some of the instances, to me, it feels like I get self-conscious, or it's like, oh man, that feels so salesy, I don't want to do it. Like number 4, how would you feel if? And how do you overcome that feeling, or help your people, your trainees overcome that feeling of, geez, I'm all of a sudden starting to feel salesy here?
Well, number 1, there is a consideration of it's not just exactly what to say, it's when to say it and how to make it count too. So timing and tonality and respect about how to use this influence are as important as understanding that you have the power to use it, if not more important. And what I'm talking about here is integrity. So here in this scenario, we've got a set of words that can allow you to create a conditional future feeling. We all know that decisions are made on emotion over logic, and that's not exactly true. What actually happens is emotion comes first. Something has to feel right before it ever makes sense. I ask rooms full of my audience right now who's married or has been married in the room, hands shoot up. I respond with a question and say, when you asked a question or had the question asked of you, is it because the person you were looking at met your multi-point inspection checklist?
Yeah.
And I get that same response that you just gave me there. So we know that some of our biggest decisions that we ever make in our life are made prompted by a feeling. Now, when it comes to making a decision, it's because we either want to move towards something or to get away from something. There's another thing here, though, is if you think about a feeling, you can't help but experience it. Now, if you insert a thought in your mind right now of something that would make you feel remarkably proud, I mean, just imagine a situation for you in this very moment that would be something that would make you feel remarkably proud. The minute you jump to that picture in your head, you experience a dose of pride. Not the full dose that you would get if that thing actually happened, but a fraction of that dose that makes you want to get after it a little bit more. What I can do is create that same conditional future feeling with people by using the words, how would you feel if? But I have to have got to a point in conversation where it is appropriate. And the point in conversation where it's appropriate is typically where somebody is in indecision. It's typically when somebody is stuck in a quandary of wondering what they should or shouldn't do. I can't use it straight off the bat because I'm salesy. Where I can use it though, is if I've got to a point where I've got rapport and I've got trust with somebody and that we're in a meaningful conversation and they are stuck in a position of maybe, which is where the bulk of my work sits. It's about moving maybes to yeses or to nos. It's about moving people out of indecision as opposed to getting somebody to buy something that they don't need. Then what I can do is I can help them see the sense. I can help them find the logic by triggering the emotion. How would you feel if in 6 months' time, that instead of you being the person who achieved this result and this success, somebody else in your team surpassed you? How would you feel if that was true? Now, what they decide in that moment is they decide that they're prepared to step up and take the action. How would you feel if as a result of all of this hard work, this dedicated effort, these actions that you're looking to be able to put into place today, how would you feel if 6 months on from now you're sat on the beach in the Bahamas with all of your family around you enjoying the fruits of your labor? You cannot help but see it. Now that you've seen it, you've felt it. Now that you've felt it, you want to get after it. So the question has huge application. It will sound salesy if it's inauthentic. And the authenticity comes through caring about the absolute result that you're looking to achieve for the other person and asking people questions they aren't prepared to ask themselves.
So something you said at the beginning of the show keeps coming back, and I love it. It's about your car washing business. And you said knocking on doors was my best conversion tactic because you had to be out in front of it. Now, I've got a number of friends, and I know I probably fall into this category a little bit too, that we're trying so hard to sell online, and it's not moving the needle that we tend to forget that you actually have to be across. You have to be knocking on that door and actually sitting mano a mano with people often. Can you tell us, what do you feel now, since so many people are trying to do this online and not actually be out there in the public? What is the difference, or how would you coach our listeners on that?
There's no right or wrong, yet what there is an understanding that things need to go through a number of checkpoints. And the best analogy that I can probably bring towards this is the dating game. Now, in an old-fashioned version of the dating game, you bump into or you meet somebody you might like. You make eyes at that person, you spend some time with that person, and you maybe find the courage to see if they want to come out and spend 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour in conversation with you over some form of mutually agreeable, safe environment. Dinner, drinks, cocktails, coffees, whatever it might be. Then if that thing then goes well, you choose to be able to spend some more time and say, hey, let's do this thing again. You allow that thing to happen a number of times, and then you maybe say, hey, let's go away for the weekend together. You say, then let's go on a 2-week vacation together. What you then do is you then say, hey, how about we move in together? You then say, well, now, why don't we think about what might happen if we're to settle down and have a family and go on and build a life? Has to go through all of those emotions. What happens with the majority of people's marketing efforts is they look for one of two things. They'll either say, we would like to have marriage and kids right now, please come join the party, and they go straight for the end goal. Or they do something worse. They look for something inappropriate on the first date. Now, what can happen with successful online businesses is if you've put the energy and impact into building trust in the first instance. I have a very responsive email list. I do very successfully with my online communications towards what I call my tribe. Why? Because nearly everybody on my list is somebody I've had belly time with, somebody I've had face-to-face time with, somebody who's experienced my work either first-hand, second-hand, or third-hand, that in some way they feel a human emotion, a connection, some form of relationship towards me. The exact same tactics that I use would be nowhere near as successful if that story wasn't true, if they didn't have some investment back in the other direction. So it's not the knocking on the doors that works, it's not the digital marketing that works, it's the being prepared to show you care before you ask people to care in you. It's being caught being brilliant ahead of time. Take my car washing business. I made it easy for people to transact with me. I only know this in hindsight. See, if I'd have put a mail through everybody's door or a leaflet through everybody's door and said, call on this number to be able to confirm your appointment, I now know in hindsight my response rate would have been awful. A kid with a giant smile knocking on the door with some charm about them and a bucket in his hand and a sponge ready to go and all of the equipment there that could get it done within 20 minutes and an ease of payment for them meant I find it really difficult to say no. That's what we should look to do in our marketing efforts and all of our sales efforts. And this is where too many people get it wrong. What they choose to do is they try to tell people how brilliant yes would look. So this is how good we are. Let's embellish the version of yes. Let's embellish our products and services in a way so that the other person might start to see that it looks good. Instead, our vantage point, the lens we choose to look it through, what would happen if, by alternative, you said, let me make it impossible for them to say no? What if that's the vantage that you come at it from? What if we make it as difficult as humanly possible for the other person to say no? That's what happened in the car cleaning business. I didn't know that's what was happening at the time, but through the reflection on it, I can see that's the reason why there was success in transaction and conversion rate, because it was easy. Now, Amazon's now easy because it has loyalty with its customers, and one click to buy means that it wins business from everybody else because there's an existing trusted relationship in place.
Interesting.
But it started somewhere different.
Yeah, interesting times, aren't they? I mean, want to move on to this number 7 that I like very much in your book as well, and it goes back to this idea of following up. I'm a big believer that half of success is showing up and the other half is then following up. And you say number 7, and again, it's overcoming our fear of rejection when you ask the question, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to it. And this is when people, they ask for something, it might be a proposal, and you send it over and it's crickets, or you've presented the idea of they coming to your workshop, but you never hear anything from them. And so then it feels a little bit uncomfortable to have to follow up because you're feeling like you're being rejected. But this, to me, sounds like a way to overcome that.
Well, it's not even overcome, it's avoid. The question I'm going to ask to everybody that is listening to this recording right now is, if something keeps happening in your business, then please consider that they might not be the problem. It might be something that you're responsible for being able to change. And the example that you've presented here is this idea of sending proposals. So if you're going to send a proposal out to your client, then clients are trained to know what to do with the proposals. Firstly, they do open it somewhere near pretty quickly once it arrives, if it arrives via email. They also read it like many religious books are read in different cultures, which is back to front. They start at the bottom, which means that once they've seen the number, they don't end up looking back towards the other pieces of information. But what they've now done as they go through that dance is they've seen the price, they haven't considered all the value ahead of that price, but they know they haven't got all of the information, but they've got the piece of information that they needed to quash their curiosity. So they leave that back in their inbox because they don't have an urgent, pressing, burning desire to be able to do business with you at this moment in time, because largely most people are fine, even if they were interested in moving forward with your wares. Particularly, say, a marketeer or anything that way around, is they might be interested in your service, they might want your service, but they can live without it because they've lived without it for every day up until right now. So they've proved to themselves they can live without it. I'm going to push it away for another day. Indecision is the number one thing that stands in the way of most people's success. Encouraging indecision is one of the commonalities I see in most people's processes. So now what's happened here is we've created a process that encourages indecision by giving them part of the information. We find ourselves in a situation following up this phone call, and I know what's going to happen. Firstly, they're going to avoid answering on a regular basis. Then when they do get round to being able to answer, they're going to say things following the question that you ask, which is, did you find the time to look at the proposal, or what did you think about the proposal? They are going to say, I've not had time to look at it properly yet, which is true. Mm-hmm. To which you're going to find yourself in this awkward, clunky conversation that nobody enjoys, which you're going to then say, well, when would be a good time for you to take a look at it? They're going to give a time scale back. That time scale is going to be something that they're going to find difficult to be able to meet that commitment towards. I'm going to do this dance out over a period of weeks. That means a good idea remains a good idea and then fades into the distance some of the time. And what happens is you, as the service provider in that environment, lose commitment towards it and feel disappointed about the whole outcome. But you scripted the dance that way. If what would have happened by alternative is that you led into that conversation, firstly, utilizing 2 different sets of magic words. Firstly, don't send it by email. Don't call it a proposal. Call it a discussion document from the get-go. Discussion document comes with some really important tools. It comes firstly with a discussion. Before you sending this document, say when would be a good time to discuss. Note that preface, it exists in the book. When would be a good time? I'm not saying is there a good time, I'm saying when would be a good time. They say, well, we should find our time to be able to talk about this at next Monday's board meeting. So when would be a good time to discuss? They say, well, Monday at the board meeting. You say, well, would it be okay if? Another set of words from the book. Would it be okay if we maybe jump some time on Tuesday to find out what you might want to do next? What's everybody going to say to a set of words that start with the words, would it be okay if? It's almost impossible to say no. Or the worst they can say is an alternative time and date. Would it be okay if? They'll say, sure. You'll agree a date and a time. You can now start that phone call with a date and a time, starting the phone call with a remarkably different set of words to how most people start a phone call. Most people start a phone call with the words, is now a good time to talk, which is the stupidest way to start a phone call in 2017, 18 and on, because if it wasn't a good time to talk, people don't pick up the phone, right? So we start in a bad place instead.
When they think they're being courteous. And I guess I do that same thing too. Is this, hey Phil, good time to talk now? And you're like, yeah, I picked up the phone.
Right, because technology has meant that life is different now. What would happen if by alternative this phone call was scheduled and you started the phone call with the words, I'm just calling as promised? Now the only thing they can say back is thank you. But this stance is again just as predictable as the other one, but this is predictable in the favour of both parties. They have the time to consider the information you've crossed. It was done with the permission of when that time would be right. Now, if we utilise a set of word choices, the one thing that we're scared of in this scheduled phone call that they're happy to be on is that they haven't had the time to be able to look at this document properly yet. That's the one thing we're fearful of. So if we take the one thing we're fearful of and we make that thing okay, and we say, I'm guessing you've not got round to reviewing the information properly yet, they can do one of two things. They can feel proud and smug that they're a person of their word and they can bounce back and tell you where they're at, or they can feel disappointed by the fact that they're a person of their word and they haven't followed through on the promise that they had, and they will rectify to you the solution without you needing to ask for it. It's all about putting you in control, and the person in control of the conversation is always the one who's asking the questions.
So you've got someone on the other line, and they are fearful, because so often, we're fearful of making the wrong decisions, and say they're nervous, apprehensive, or showing signs of concern. How do you overcome that?
Be as precise as you possibly can with an example, and let's see if we can make a story for the listener.
Be as precise as possible, so something that they can relate to.
You got it.
Yeah. Now let's transition. And by the way, I made the note under score at the belly time. You got to have belly time. I love that. You're mano-a-mano again with somebody. How does this knowledge in your book here, exactly what to say, translate online? If you aren't in front of these people and you are trying to connect online in this virtual world, are these as powerful? Can you use them there? Or is it really you still got to be in front of people?
There's a myth about online that people think that they're reaching 10,000 people at once. They're reaching people one at a time with the ability to have 10,000 conversations. That's what having a list of 10,000 people means. A mistake that people make when they're marketing to mass is they treat them as an entity. They're not an entity, they're a collection of individuals. Don't ever forget that. Here is something else that needs to be remembered and set in stone, is questions lead to conversations. Conversations lead to relationships. Relationships lead to opportunities. Opportunities lead to sales. Repeat. That will never ever go out of fashion. So what we're actually looking to do with any of our outbound communication methods is to start conversations. Whereas what happens with people in the online space is they think they're looking to make sales, yet they're currently not in the conversation. Now, if you're not in the conversation, you can't build the relationship. If you're not in the relationship, you don't get the opportunity. And if you don't get the opportunity, you can't make the sale. So let's bring that back round to where can we utilize things like the magic words and exactly what to say into our online space. Well, if you think a little bit more about the fact that what you're looking to be able to do is to start that initial piece of engagement, where can you use questions more in all of your outbound marketing efforts? Well, number one, you can use them as subject lines within emails. Number two, you can insert more questions into your email, your social posting to be able to up your level of engagement. So what you're doing is you're starting more conversations. Those conversations will present themselves with the opportunity for people to win trust back in with you. Same thing would then be true in any video content that you're looking for in sales page optimization or lead page optimization, is to say, where am I using the right word choices to trigger the absolute action that I'm looking for people to make? And what people think is the action they're looking to make is sometimes I'm looking for somebody to purchase the product and to check out. That's very rarely the action that you're looking for somebody to take. There's an action that needs to exist before the action. What's that action and how do you get somebody to do it? And you can do that with word choices. You can do it by asking questions. Those questions will start a conversation, because until that conversation happens, you don't get the relationship, you don't get the opportunity, you don't get the sale. So I think from your mind, you're probably considering dozens of applications to where the words could exist, but they only work in conversation. They do not work in broadcast.
So the idea then could be, and I like this concept of you're not mass marketing to an entity, you are having 10,000 individual conversations, and you have to switch your thinking and tell the stories that are going to connect to create the conversations that develop the relationships that then lead you to the opportunity to actually make a sale, then wash, rinse, and repeat over and over again and deliver on those promises and deliver on those stories.
Here's an example of a mistake, and I think this one might make it clear. It happens in the professional speaking world, and it happens in the world of digital marketing consistently. And it's when questions are asked like, how many of you? So I see it at nearly every conference I go to. Somebody will say on stage, look to engage with an audience and ask the question, how many of you are this? And what they're looking to achieve is they're looking to achieve a show of hands. But the reality of that question is, if you think about the literal question that's being asked, is how many of you? What it's actually done is it's said, I now need to look around the room and count hands. It hasn't said that my responsibility is to raise mine. My responsibility now is to look around and try and answer the question that was asked of me, which is how many of you? So instead of me engaging back with the speaker, what happens is I engage with the room. That same thing happens in written copy. Well, what happens is people are broadcasting the fact that this is a bulk mass communication, as opposed to touching the heart of the very one person that they need to act.
Now, how do you change that then? So you are in front of the room and you are the one asking that question, how many of you are this? How you're trying to get engagement ultimately, but how do you keep them engaged with you in pivoting on how you ask that question?
Well, in that scenario, you could be way more direct. You could simply ask, by leading with your own hand, show of hands, have you ever? Right? Hand goes up, show of hands, have you ever? Now, it's a have you ever prefaced directly towards that audience. Now, if the answer is yes, your hand can shoot up. Mm-hmm. We can make a more dramatic impact by leading towards the no and lead towards inaction. How many of you have never? Now, how many of you have never has everybody looking around, but that's now done on purpose because I want everybody to see no hands. See the difference? Mm-hmm. But what we're looking to be able to do is to decide the outcome first. And if you know the outcome first, you can pick the communication to serve the outcome. But most people fail to define an outcome before they start to converse.
Oh, it's fascinating to me because when I got your book and started reading through it, I really started with that context of network marketing because I've heard so many of these things coached in different ways, but I love how you've pulled it all together. You've got 23 different things that you can be saying. That it felt like you needed to be in person to really make this work. But what you're saying is I can keep this, anybody can keep this by their computer side. And as you were writing blog posts and emails and that sort of thing, is to go back and test your copy, proof your copy against some or all of these words that work.
And I'll just make a reference to this right now. I'm looking on Amazon.co.uk right now. And this caught my eye earlier on today, just to give people some thoughts. So against my book, and reviews for an author do matter. People think that authors don't read their reviews, etc. I read everything that is written about me that I stumble across, and reviews online is huge. But here is an update to a review that was placed on my book on .co.uk. It says, I've been using this book for several months now, and it definitely makes a difference to the feel and outcome of many conversations. Great. Most recently, I wrote a very short but important email requesting the time and intention of someone I felt would certainly entertain the idea without having some written information, or wouldn't entertain the idea without having some written information ahead of time. 6 sentences, 4 magic words. Not only did I get a response back the same day, but I also got the response I wanted without sounding pushy. So that's not me saying that that's somebody else's words. And I wrote this book with conversation in mind, for certain. But its application through blog posts, through online material, through headlines and emails, etc., is something that I've learned of being a greater level of its application through publishing the book and other people telling me how they've used it.
Now, for our listeners, if you go to philmjones.com, you'll get to see Phil in action with his videos, and you've got a ton of courses and books here. Do you use, I would imagine, all of these same tactics to sell your online courses and your DVDs and your books? I mean, is there any major aha moments you have come across that right when you think you got it all figured out, you're like, oh, here's a mistake that I'm making, and therefore others must be doing the same thing?
I've made every mistake that I think is knowable to man, and I'm going to continue to do more of them. What I have learned, though, is particularly through doing a lot of online marketing historically, is I've learned that it misses ingredients for me. Human connection is something that I require to be able to find fulfillment and success within my work. I don't want to produce a video or an email that moves people to action and I didn't know about it. I want to be in the conversation, and that's why I speak for a living. That's why I continue to use my methodology as a sales professional to go out and win new business. I jump on the phone to people. I go out and meet with people. I have lunches, dinners, coffees. Now, my online business benefits as a result of that, because what happens is in all those real-time moments that I connect with real people, it leaves them with memories and stories. Those memories and stories mean that I am one of the most important things that I look to be as a professional, and that is remarkable. And I mean it in its purest context of the words. It means other people will talk about me. And the stories that are shared from the real-life activities that I have of meeting in the moments with others are the things that then get talked about. My online business wins by a result of that, by being a beautifully, brilliantly prepared accident.
Yeah, nothing replaces that connection, does it?
I don't believe so, my friend.
Are you familiar with Bob Berg? He works in the same sort of realm that you do. He wrote a terrific book.
Bob is a great friend of mine. Great friend of mine.
He wrote The Go-Giver. And this guy not only lives what he talks about in his book, but he was on my show a few months ago. It's show number 95, if the rest of you haven't heard Bob out there. And he is just exceptional in his approach to this. Give first. Bring, as you mentioned earlier, massive integrity, bring massive value, and be there. Show up.
There's another lesson just in that Bob Berg story, which I want everybody to be aware of, knowing Bob as well as I've got to know him over the last couple of years. And I think there's a lesson in it for everybody. And when we've talked about online space and network marketing and business and entrepreneurship, there's a lesson that comes out that Bob is a beautiful example of, which is that you cannot be who you're not. Congruence is one of the most important factors of building your success story. And what Bob is a go-giver in every aspect of his life. His book isn't a great piece of literature. It's a manual towards the way that the guy lives. And, I'm hoping that you've seen today is that as I talk about what we talk about and exactly what to say, that's just my work. It's my world. It's not me trying to be clever. It's me trying to serve. And this is my push to everybody else listening in, is find, live, and work your truth and make it feel right, because you cannot be who you're not.
Well said. And with that, let's end on, if you haven't gotten Phil's book, go out and you can get it on Amazon, Exactly What to Say, the magic words for influence and impact. And what I love about this, it is a simple user manual. It's not like you have to spend hours pouring through this. You can flip through it and use it. It's almost like a little dumbbell, a sales dumbbell. Work it, review it every single day, and I think you're going to have a real impact, see a difference in your business and in your storytelling.
Thank you.
Out there. Phil, last thing, I've been sending them to philmjones.com. Anywhere else we need to be sending them, or is that the place to go?
It's the place to start. I will add one more little caveat, is the most exciting thing that I can hear from anybody that's ever plugged into any of my work is, what have you used? How did it work? And I want to be part of that conversation. So the place that you find me more than anywhere else, where you know that it's me and that it's not broadcast or brand awareness or anything like that, it's just me hanging out and sharing information, is on Twitter. That's at PhilMJonesUK. And I'd love to hear from anybody listening into the podcast, anybody that has an interest in my work. Come join the conversation there and we get to hang out and have fun.
Phil M. Jones UK on Twitter. Great. Well, thank you, Phil, for taking the time to be here and for sharing your wisdom. Just an awesome show. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. If I can be of service to you like Phil has been today, visit me over at businessofstory.com. I've got your DIY workbook to help you clarify your story, to grow revenue, and amplify your impact. 64 pages. It has full of examples. It will take you by the hand to help you really dial in your story. And it occurs to me as I'm telling you this, Phil is probably coaching in the background saying, oh, dude, you missed this. You should have said that. You should have a little bit of pressure there. So I'll have to circle back with you, Phil, on how I can perfect that pitch. For all of you, thank you for being here. And remember, the most important, potent story you are ever going to tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. And until next Sunday, have a wonderful life.